So the first role on this ladder number 55 is the design for disassembly systems consultant, pulling in between $150,000 and $600,000.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's visualize what a design for disassembly or DFD consultant actually does. It's basically the difference between gluing a model airplane together so that it eventually just ends up in a landfill versus building that same airplane out of Legos.
I love that analogy.
Right. Because when you use Legos, it becomes a valuable kit of parts that you can take apart and use again decades later.
And historically, the commercial construction industry just loves glue. I mean, they love bonding materials together permanently.
Because it's fast.
Exactly. But a DFD consultant steps into the early planning phases, and they mandate things like bolted connections, accessible fixings, standardized dimensions. They're essentially creating the mechanical framework for how a building can be unbolted and dismantled in, say, 50 years.
But, and this is key notice, they're deliverable here.
Right. They aren't turning the wrenches.
Exactly. They produce material passports and deconstruction sequencing outlines. They are writing the rule book for the future.
Yeah, but once you successfully design a building to be taken apart like Legos, you immediately create a massive new logistical headache.
Oh, for sure. When you dismantle a skyscraper, you suddenly have thousands of tons of used steel, glass, timber.
And who manages that pile of brick?
Right, which introduces role number 54, the circular materials marketplace broker, earning $155,000 to $650,000.
Basically a matchmaker for commercial waste.
Yes, connecting surplus materials with active new projects. But I have a pushback here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Couldn't a commercial builder just use, like, eBay or Craigslist for surplus wood? Why pay a specialized broker hundreds of thousands of dollars just to find some used beams?
Try building a 30-story commercial office tower using materials you sourced from Craigslist.
Good luck with the permits on that.
Exactly. The liability is astronomical. A commercial developer can't just assume that a random steel beam they bought online has the structural integrity to support a high-rise.
So what's the broker actually doing then?
The true value isn't the act of finding the materials. It's proving what the industry calls spec equivalence.
Spec equivalence?
Right. The broker provides the rigorous documentation, the provenance, the engineering condition reports. They guarantee that the reclaimed steel beam meets the exact same structural and safety certifications as a brand new one right out of a factory.
Ah, so they aren't thrifting.
Not at all. They're managing severe structural risk and logistics.
Okay, so the broker ensures the physical materials are safe and certified. But securing the materials is really only half the battle. Making sure those materials actually perform the way they're supposed to when they're assembled, that is where the source material notes that the projects frequently fail.
Yeah, and that introduces a whole new class of professionals on this ladder. I like to call them the skeptics and the gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers, yeah.
Their entire job is to protect the integrity of the original design.
Which brings us to role 53, the net zero design QA lead, earning $160,000 to $700,000. Think of this role as the sustainability equivalent of a technical director.
Right. They operate on a fractional retainer across multiple projects just to catch what is called drift.
Drift, like scope creep.
Sort of. Imagine an architect decides halfway through the design process to increase the window glazing ratio by, say, 5% just because it looks better aesthetically.
Okay.
That tiny change might completely destroy the building's carbon budget.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the QA lead catches that drift before the first shovel even hits the dirt.
And working alongside them is role 52, the building physics red team reviewer, making $160,000 to $720,000 a year.
Red team, it sounds like a cybersecurity hacker.
Totally, but for HVAC systems.
Essentially, yeah. They are paid to be the skeptical brain of the entire operation. A red team reviewer actively stress tests the building's physics.
Like the heat, the airflows, the moisture dynamics.
Exactly. They hunt for thermal bridging or condensation risks that are just buried deep in the architectural plans. And what's fascinating here is how both of these roles, the QA lead and a red team reviewer, are selling governance.
They're auditing the design.
Yes.
But wait, if the primary architect is already getting paid millions to design a net zero building, why would a developer pay a red team reviewer another $700,000 just to look over the architect's shoulder and critique the work?
Because it is exponentially cheaper to erase a line on a blueprint today than it is to tear open a physical wall in 5 years to fix a catastrophic black mold problem.
That makes total sense.
During the messy, cost-cutting phase of procurement, corners get cut. These gatekeepers ensure the original net zero intent actually survives the construction process. They prevent those expensive future failures.
Okay, so we've dismantled the building, brokered the materials, and stress tested the physics. But to keep scaling impact, you have to zoom out.
You have to look beyond the single plot of land.
Exactly, and evaluate the entire neighborhood. Which brings us to role 51, the climate positive master planning advisor, a role that pushes the salary ceiling up to $170,000 to $780,000.
Now we're talking about designing the sustainability spine of massive multi-acre developments.
District-wide energy networks, biodiversity corridors, regional mobility strategies.
And the source material highlights a major philosophical pivot here. We are moving from doing less harm, which is the basic definition of a net zero building, to actively doing good.
Net positive.
Right. Climate positive strategies mean creating net positive impacts, like designing landscapes that sequester more carbon than the buildings emit, or creating measurable community health benefits through the urban design itself.
And their deliverable isn't just a finished architectural blueprint, right?
No, not at all. They deliver a phased roadmap, a governance model, and KPI measurement plans. They arm the developer with the hard data and the persuasive narratives required to win zoning approvals from city councils or to secure funding from skeptical institutional investors.
It's high-level urban strategy. But executing these massive master plans, tracking carbon across like a 50-building portfolio, comparing thousands of material data sheets, it requires an absurd amount of data.
So much data.
Human brains, even armed with complex spreadsheets, simply cannot crunch it fast enough.
And that data bottleneck creates the next major leap on our ladder, the software founders.
The Micro-SaaS, boom. Software as a service. This is where the transition from selling your time to selling infrastructure becomes literal digital infrastructure. We see a rapid sequence of 5 highly lucrative Micro-SaaS roles spanning from $180,000 up to over $1 million a year. Let's hit these rapid fires.
Let's do it. Roll 50. The LCA to BOM converter.
Okay, an LCA is a life cycle assessment. It essentially tells the design team what their overall carbon target is for a building. A BOM is a bill of materials, the literal shopping list of screws, panels, and concrete the contractor needs to buy.
And historically, those two things just don't talk to each other. Teams know their abstract carbon target, but they have no idea exactly which specific panels to buy to actually hit that target.
So this software engine translates the theoretical carbon math directly into a concrete shopping list.
Exactly. But once you have that low carbon shopping list, you run into the next massive friction point, actually finding those specific materials and legally inserting them into the building specifications.
Which gives rise to Role 49, the EPD Search and Spec plugin, pushing up to $950,000 a year.
Now, EPD stands for Environmental Product Declaration. It's basically a verified nutrition label for a building material's environmental impact.
The source text has a perfect analogy for this. It calls this plugin the Google plus copy-paste safety rails for low-carbon procurement.
I love that phrase. It lets a procurement manager search for verified materials and drop the approved, bulletproof legal language right into their contracts.
It removes the friction so they don't accidentally buy the wrong concrete mix just because the paperwork was confusing.
Yeah.
Because if they buy the wrong mix...
The project fails its sustainability certification.
Exactly.
Following that is Role 48, the carbon budget checker for projects. This one cracks the $1 million mark.
Yeah, $190K to $1.05 million.
And this software attaches actual real-time design decisions to their carbon impacts, functioning exactly like a financial bank account, but for carbon emissions.
Okay, Role 47 is my favorite on the entire list. The green submittal approval workflow, earning $190,000 to $1.1 million. The text uses a very evocative phrase here. It says, submittals are where sustainability dies quietly.
It's so true.
Explain to the listener why an MVP, a minimum viable product for tracking this stuff, is worth over $1 million a year.
Well, picture the absolute chaos of a construction site trailer. The architect specifies a highly specialized, low-carbon adhesive for the flooring, but the subcontractor on site realizes that adhesive is backordered for 3 weeks.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. So the subcontractor submits a formal request, a submittal, asking to substitute it with the standard high-carbon adhesive they already have sitting in their truck.
And if the sustainability team misses that single submittal in the mountain of daily paperwork,
the low-carbon adhesive gets swapped out. Multiply that substitution by 10,000 different components over a 2-year build, and your sustainable building is suddenly a high-carbon building. Sustainability dies quietly by 1,000 paper cuts.
So contractors will gladly pay massive subscription fees for software that tracks these substitutions.
Exactly. It creates an unbypassable workflow for checking things like VOC certificates, volatile organic compounds. It turns site chaos into a rigid, automated compliance tracker, saving the contractor from devastating rework costs if they fail an environmental audit later.
Incredible. Okay, rounding out the sauce section is Role 46. The retrofit ROI and incentives engine, earning up to $1.2 million.
Because untangling the math of retrofitting old buildings is notoriously messy.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Think about an owner looking to upgrade a 1970s office building. If they replace the windows, they might qualify for a state rebate, but their local tax liability might change, Regional energy grid tariffs fluctuate daily. Tenant disruption costs have to be factored in.
A human using an Excel spreadsheet is almost guaranteed to make a costly error calculating that payback period.
Right. So this software engine runs 10,000 financial permutations in seconds, factoring in the rebates and the energy savings, so owners can compare investment scenarios side by side.
You build the software engine once, and you sell the subscription to 1,000 different real estate owners. That is the purest definition of scaling your income.
Okay, having all of this aggregated data from these software tools is incredibly powerful, but raw data is only step one,
Acting on it is step two.
which pushes us into the advanced tech segment of the ladder, digital twins and AI. Roll45 is the digital twin setup consultant, making $200,000 to $1.25 million.
A digital twin is a real-time virtual replica of a physical building fed by thousands of live sensors. But the source text makes a vital distinction here.
What's that?
The value of a digital twin isn't just that it exists. Having a cool 3D model with blinking lights on a computer screen is basically useless on its own. The real value is in the automation.
Okay, walk me through that.
The digital twin continuously monitors the live data against the original baseline. So if the HVAC system starts using 15% more energy than it should, the twin doesn't just display a red graph. It triggers an alert workflow telling the facility manager exactly which valve is malfunctioning and how to fix it.
It makes the data actionable.
Exactly.
That brings us to Roll44, the AI prompt pack publisher for environmental design teams, earning $200,000 to $1.3 million a year. Now, I have to pause here. Wait, someone is making up to $1.3 million a year just selling ChatGPT prompts.
Yeah.
How's it possible?
It sounds absurd until you look at the liability involved. The product is not just a loose list of basic prompts you could find on a blog. They are selling workflow acceleration bound by strict legal guardrails.
Oh, guardrails against greenwashing.
Exactly. If a major architecture firm uses a generic AI tool to quickly write a sustainability narrative for a massive public infrastructure project, and that AI hallucinates a data point,
Or makes a scientifically invalid claim about carbon reduction.
right, that firm is completely legally exposed. They could be sued for fraud.
So this publisher is selling a heavily tested AI toolkit that drastically speeds up the tedious documentation process while actively mitigating the risk of errors.
Yes, enterprise firms pay massive license fees for that exact toolkit. They aren't just buying prompts, they're buying speed without the risk of getting sued. It's essentially an insurance policy wrapped inside a productivity tool.
We have reached the absolute top of the ladder. We've gone from dismantling physical materials to auditing physics to building software to deploying AI. But all of these automated tools, live sensors, and master plans require human leadership to guide them at the highest corporate level.
Right. This is the realm of fractional executive leadership. You're no longer advising on a single building. You are steering the ship for entire corporations.
Roll43, the remote sustainability PMO, or program management office, pulling in $210,000 to $1.4 million.
They act as a fractional operations arm across multiple projects.
A PMO in this space is basically an air traffic controller. If a massive corporation is simultaneously retrofitting 50 buildings in 50 different cities, you have 50 different local building codes, hundreds of contractors, and overlapping deadlines all crashing into each other.
The PMO builds the radar system, the overarching governance structures, the milestone gates, the universal trackers, so the executive board can see everything moving at once without planes colliding.
Stepping up even higher is Roll42, the portfolio net zero roadmap architect, earning $220,000 to $1.55 million.
This role is entirely about macro-scale strategy. If a massive real estate investment trust owns 200 buildings, they physically and financially cannot retrofit them all tomorrow.
So the roadmap architect has to decide the sequence. They dictate what gets tackled first, what gets bundled together to achieve economies of scale, and what gets deferred until technology gets cheaper.
They analyze the baselines across the entire portfolio and set the strict carbon budgets. The impact here is measured in massive CapEx or capital expenditure decisions.
Which brings us to the final role on the ladder, number 41, the peak of Tier 4.
The Resilience Program Director, earning $230,000 to $1.7 million a year.
This is resilience leadership as a service.
Yes, it's making adaptation operational, not theoretical. They're running granular hazard assessments across multi-billion-dollar asset portfolios,
Creating capital prioritization plans to physically protect specific assets from flash flooding or extreme heat waves or regional grid failures.
because at the end of the day, climate resilience is not just an environmental goal, it is a board-level financial imperative. If a corporation's primary data center floods or their international supply chain collapses due to an extreme weather event, the company loses hundreds of millions of dollars overnight.
And because resilience is a board-level concern, operating on multi-client retainers pushes the salary potential to that 1.7 million mark.
They translate climate risk into financial language and actionable governance. They are protecting the bottom line from the changing climate.
Wow. We've just traced an incredible path, moving step by step from a $150,000 material consulting role all the way up to a $1.7 million executive boardroom position.
It's quite a journey.
It really is.